the intro to the channel.
Some of this.
It's a bit meta in a way. What are we actually just doing a podcast, or are we preparing a podcast, or it's weird. But if I don't know if Coca-Cola or rather Pepsi wants to sponsor us, I'm all for it. But
I was kind of the odd one out. Even if people said they believed in God, the secularist argument and the certainty that all is just what your senses can tell you, there's nothing more, and that everything is a trick or an illusion or a lie. They were all fools back then that believed in the spirit, not just superstitious people that didn't understand science or reality and they made up stories.
But is there also a kind of warrior-like mentality, even like to fight secularism? Is that something you want to do with your content?
Where I will defend this perspective.
Yeah, that sounds funny.
It's
super funny. Sounds super funny. Part of the mission, I guess, is that grifters should fear us. Because we will expose them.
Yeah.
We are not the kind of new agey woo-woo guys.
No.
If I would sum it up, I think I would say that experience is the only reality there is. Something in me woke up to the possibility to just join you on your pilgrimage.
Yeah, this is, again, another point that drives us to make this channel work.
What are we actually just doing a podcast, or are we preparing a podcast, or it's weird, but this is all part of the thing. That's kind of, it's the charm of the whole thing.
Yeah, it is.
This exploring this medium has been so exciting so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is the intro to the channel, and we are still trying to figure out, brand and style, and honestly, I'm not ashamed to say that we can't avoid the sort of an amateurish quality of just figuring it out as we go.
Of course, that's the trial and error thing.
Yeah,
and it's also the DIY thing that's actually also part of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be this kind of corporate product.
No. I mean, it's, at some point, if we naturally fall into a groove that's rhythmic.
If I don't know if Coca-Cola or rather Pepsi wants to sponsor us, I'm all for it. But I don't think that will happen anytime soon. So let's just take it easy for the moment and just go with the flow.
Yeah, but that's the thing, we'll just, like I said, maybe I use this footage, maybe not. It doesn't really matter, and I don't care. I mean, this is Gonzo Pilgrimage. Part of it is that, people are with us, and I don't see a problem with them being with us in principle with the setup and the design and watching us trying to figure it out. Who knows, maybe then people will not only message us with advice on travel, places to go, people to talk to, but also how to get the channel to grow, how to make it a bit more streamlined without losing its character.
Yeah, I mean, how awesome would it be if people just put in the comments, like you could use this or that angle, or, I mean, this kind of communication.
Yeah.
It's us on a pilgrimage, but I mean, it's about taking people with us on that journey.
We're all on a pilgrimage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not about us. It's about sharing an experience that inspires others to have the same, or like to experience the same things from another, with their given circumstances, conditions.
Well, that's the interplay with the Gonzo thing, and it's interesting because if it was anywhere away from where it actually is, it would be hard to call it Gonzo, because there's an objective quality that we're going for with making these films. However, I think the Gonzo aspect is one that we are subjectively filming and experiencing it, and of course whatever conclusions that we arrive at, that's just our subjective opinion. But the great thing about that pilgrimage aspect and filming it the way we are is everybody's going to have their own experience. I mean, that's what we want to do, and we're still figuring out the best way to do that. But the cameras are trying to serve as like the subjective experience for the audience.
Yeah.
And so it's weirdly, we're having this objective approach. We're subjectively experimenting with these places and spiritual traditions and people, but we want the audience to have their subjective experience, you know? So it's really this strange interplay of subjective objective with the Gonzo aspect of the pilgrimage.
Yeah, it's a kind of transcending these in a very novel way almost.
Yeah, it plays with the definitions.
At least that's the thing. It's at least about trying to kind of, perception is everything. I mean, perception is reality. I think you never really told me, how did you get the idea about starting something like this? I mean, we have talked about like writing stuff or creating some kind of contact related to our own spirituality. But what actually triggered this, I will do this, I will start a channel now?
It was definitely a mix of things, you know, the interplay of different creative realms to explore, creative realms that I'm already familiar with, that I know I have some kind of, some people have said a talent for or a sense for. But it really all begins with the seed is my spiritual history. Because throughout my life, I've seen mythology as more than myth, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, but I think a lot of other people can't. I think that there's a lot of people in the modern world that, you know, if you talk about, you know, Egyptian mythology, Greek, particularly in America, Greek mythology is like the most kind of common, familiar. People sort of see that in terms of almost like comic book context, you know, and maybe Marvel has something to do with that, but when you're looking at stories, people really just see the story, or you'll often hear that it's like, oh, those are just, you know, wise tales, warning tales, you know, these kinds of folk stories.
Yeah.
And, but that was the thing, you know. I could tell that there was something beyond just the story, that the story had meaning. So there's that personal instinct. I was raised a Christian, and I was in my youth very devoted to Christianity. I was more devoted than any of the people I knew in my circles, to the point where I was kind of the odd one out. Even if people said they believed in God, you know, when I would say to them, you know, about my prayer practices or thoughts on the Bible, because I was reading the Bible in my youth, that was already too much for some of the people around me. But yeah, I had this kind of reverse awakening that people talk about, you know, this like, negative thing where the more I tried to work within the current of God and with Jesus, the more I felt his absence in my life personally. And so I was unfound. People say they're you know, they've been found or they've been reborn, and I felt very much unborn. And I understand the aspects or the arguments of the Satanists that are theistic Satanists that believe in God and hate him. I really was going through dark points in my life and felt completely abandoned, just like you read in the Psalms in the Bible of, oh my Lord, why have you abandoned me? How could you have, you know, these things. I could relate quite a lot and couldn't understand that that begging aspect, that you acknowledge that there's the circumstance that God has put you in from a Christian perspective that is almost too much to bear, and then you're begging that same, say,
like Jesus did.
Figure.
So this kind of, you didn't want to live that myth?
Yeah, I mean, it's more like I wanted to live that myth, but the myth didn't live for me. It didn't embody, you know.
I mean, I guess Jesus on the cross got some kind of answer when he asked, I guess.
Yeah.
At least somewhere inside of him.
Yeah.
Although I cannot really say if he did. That's probably something for another video. But you at least did not get any answer.
In terms of Christ, I always found it really interesting, and this was a reason for me to move away from Christianity, for example, at that time in my youth, was Jesus both said on the cross, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do," but at the same time said, "Why hast thou forsaken me?"
Yeah.
This was this strange, you know, contrast, this for a teenager as I was at that time, that's some mental gymnastics. How can it be both?
Yeah.
And so, you know, unfortunately this contrast, it just created a chasm in my spirituality at that time. And eventually, logic simply drove me to agnosticism, which is, you know, just saying, hey, either there is or there isn't, you know.
Let me interrupt you for a moment, because I think let's just jump forward. Would you say that your perspective on that, let's say, confused teenager has it changed from then? Do you look back on yourself then and say, okay, that was a necessary part of the evolution, but the things that actually drove me away from it today, I understand them in a way?
Yeah, I think that, what's a good way of putting that? Yes, I think my criticisms at that time were fair, but I think that my conclusions were off, and that's something that has changed a lot in this time. And the thing is, I definitely am far away from this sort of Christian hatred that I had as a direct result of this. I have a lot of compassion and respect and curiosity for all of the Christian traditions and perspectives. But what I've learned for certain is that is not my path, but that doesn't mean it's not someone else's path.
I mean, I agree, and I think it's probably also very important to point out about this channel that we have this approach that basically every religion or every spiritual path has some kind of truth to it.
Yeah.
It's just another perspective, how you approach the truth. So there's no reason to exclude anything that basically includes this little core of truth, even if it's just a little bit sometimes. It's still there, and it's interesting to find out more about it. So, but yeah, please continue with your personal history.
Yeah, so that's, I think that there's a deep connection between logical understanding and truth seeking. I think that goes really hand in hand, that if you're a truth seeker, you're probably invested in the logic that leads you there. You know, logic being like a conveyor belt to it. And so anyway, I logically ended up with this agnostic, not so much like I'll never know. A lot of people say that agnostically is just, oh, nobody can know. For me, it was very clear, it either is or it isn't, like everything in life, literally. And that was a conclusion that I tried to debate myself for years to get to the core of reality, of spirituality, of even atheism, everything. Was everything is or isn't all the time. And we have to contend with that. And the truth is somewhere within this argument. So because I think that's where I never let go of the investigation. I think a lot of agnostics kind of wash their hands of spirituality. I think that it's it's an escape from the conversation or a cop-out where they say, well, no one can never know, so why should I bother getting involved? Or why should I develop any kind of understanding of spirituality? But for me, agnosticism was a constant inner debate.
Okay. So would you say this tension of that inner debate was a driving force for you, driving you forward?
Yeah, and I didn't know to what, and I didn't know at the time that it was that. It was to me, it was really summed up as this is my drive for truth. So I was in every way not spiritual, except for that kind of seeker mentality.
Yeah.
But I had no tradition, and I, in truth, I still did not really understand the nature of traditions, the nature of spirituality. So, however, after a long string of events, without diving too much into my personal perspective now, I came across a book that was like none I've ever seen before. It involved myth, but it involved the understanding of many traditions. This became this focal point of fascination for me, and was the challenge towards my agnostic debate and inner dilemma. This finally was the thing that I could, it was essentially the battleground that I could finally have that debate in. And I did that by starting my first ritual as described in the book, completely without expectation, no hope. The only hope I had was that it would be an interesting experience, and that was it. And then when I finished it, I had results that for me personally made no logical sense in terms of reality. I witnessed a spiritual event. I wouldn't go so far as to say a miracle, but I witnessed something that shook my foundation or my relationship with what I understood to be reality.
I understand.
From that, it's led me down the deepening of my own faith and the investigation of all faith as the direction for this agnostic debate I always had. And upon entering a spiritual black school and developing that understanding, it's led to this. And this is what this channel is about, that there is no greater lie than the secularist argument and the certainty that all is just what your senses can tell you, and that there's nothing more, and that everything is a trick or an illusion or a lie. There is so much more when you explore consciousness, when you explore the nature of reality, and when you look into the deep esoteric traditions of the world, that it's not just superstitious people that didn't understand science or reality and they made up stories. There's something more to it than that, and that's what this channel is trying to uncover, not just for myself anymore, but for everyone. I think that it's crucial.
So, I mean, we already established that this channel is about a journey, a pilgrimage that lets us, together with the viewers, somehow explore these things, these different traditions, or even these little nuggets of spiritual truth along the way. But would you say that beside the aspect of just being on a journey and moving through the world and experience, is there also a mission? Is there a mission with that channel? Do you feel like a missionary in a way?
In some sense, no, because a missionary will be trying to further their personal tradition for others, and it's my intent at the time of this recording to keep my personal tradition and my personal practices personal, so as not to distract from the subject. However, in a sense, you could argue that there's a missionary-like intent that people find a tradition or a perspective of faith that works for them, that they can develop and grow. That's really, I would say it's less of missionary work and perhaps more of an invitation to a personal call to action. It's time to learn what more there is to consciousness and to spiritual traditions around the world, for every strata of the self, and that includes the consciousness of your individuality, the consciousness of your family, the consciousness of your society, and interconnected all of these different levels to living. You know, I mean, it's, for example, Jordan Peterson had said, you're a node in a network, and it's very much the case. I think that it's time to take responsibility for your consciousness through faith, and by then create this ripple effect.
But is there also a kind of warrior-like mentality, even like to fight secularism? Is that something you want to do with your content, or is it more like still more like teaching or just showing?
I've thought about that a great deal, and it's hard to say how this will develop. I think it depends very much on the direction of the channel and the reception of the content. I'll put it this way: at the moment, it's more so that I would like the channel and the exploration, the pilgrimage aspect to speak for itself. However, I will defend this perspective that spirituality and working with consciousness is essential to life beyond just, what you want in your, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, and living in a material world that seems to be completely self-centered. I think that that there is more to reality and life than that, and that we need to focus beyond the most obvious material, objective things that people experience in their subjective life. So it definitely depends on the reception and the argumentation that comes forward.
But you're not, you're not zealous or kind of aggressively trying to push some kind of narrative.
No.
It's more about, let's say, defending some spiritual core values. And to get, like, to kindle some flames, maybe?
Perhaps.
The flame of truth in people.
Yes, the thing is, I've been very careful with how I phrase these things on the social media channels. I like to refer to Gonzo Pilgrimage as the contrast to ever-growing, increasing secularism or atheistic ideas. Now, to be fair and to avoid any kinds of accusations of hypocrisy or double standards, when there is a conscious choice and a conscious debate for an atheistic perspective or view, that's fine. I am not trying to convert people out of atheism or secularism, but I am going to promote the contrast that will create sort of a respectable boundary. The real issue is that I see an imbalance with atheism and secularism in modern times, and I think we need to at least return to a balance. And that's and however we do that, then
understand.
yes, yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting that you address that you do not want to necessarily convert atheist people that come to that position in a very conscious way. So I wonder if you would agree that atheism might actually be a step in the right direction for someone who is kind of estranged from the religion he or her grew up in, and that it sometimes can be the first step to some kind of, then later coming back to something more true in a way.
Well, it goes without saying that everybody of every tradition or every faith can be extremely arrogant, egocentric, stubborn. So I just want to preface this. The thing with atheists that I agree with a lot of descriptions of them is that they are by nature, they are seekers as well. They like to be scientific, and they like to be investigative and ask questions and really dive into the depths and dissect everything without unnecessary optimism or pessimism. That's why their chief weapon of argumentation, or at the core of their understanding, their worldview, is science. And that makes perfect sense. But the issue I see often is then the arrogance that you don't see in agnostics, and I would say, in my personal experience, I've come across far more sort of illogical, atheistic arrogance than I have from spiritual people, which in many traditions, that if you're a genuine practitioner, even if it's something that's more stoic and less faith-based, and that there comes a humbleness, or there comes at least there's an understanding with religious people.
Exactly.
That everything is so much bigger than just the thoughts behind their eyes. And so, and I don't see that with atheists. Atheists are very much united in just saying, I see a cup, you see a cup, there's a cup there, to hell with everything else. And
I mean, isn't that funny that actually atheists that are fighting against religious dogma are the most dogmatic people in the world?
yes,
I think it's fair to say that, because although I know atheists that are not that bad, there are many atheists out there who would actually even agree with what I say.
Sure.
There is no room for any other view in their worldview.
Exactly.
So it's exactly what they supposedly fight against, what they actually live.
Yeah, and for me, I agree, and I see it as like a tragic irony.
Yeah.
It's ironic, and I genuinely find it tragic when they think that how is a good enough question instead of why. And when we look at history, it's the why and the how that got us to modern science in the first place. It's because we had religious philosophers that were also scientifically oriented that we are able to have atheism as we have it today, because of the profound evolution of science.
That's true.
And I find it sad, because it seems to be, if at least we use history as a prime example, the farther we go into materialism and atheism, the worse things get. Take, for example, the religion is the opiate of the masses, Karl Marx remark, leading to communism. Well, it doesn't matter if you want to argue what's true communism or not true communism. The fact of the matter is that when people have adopted the atheistic mindset more and more, it's led to worse and worse outcomes. And I find that a tragic phenomenon.
It's true. So I was already asking you about what triggered this Gonzo Pilgrimage project, but you haven't really answered the question why you chose this medium over another one. Or maybe, rather, let me say it like that. Is it possible that you have a broader approach than just making videos?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Gonzo Pilgrimages has manifested the way that it has is I would say simply because there's just too many approaches to take here, and having a channel is one of the best ways to create a kind of a network. It's, I think, the medium that attracts more people. People can be more invested, whether they're, for example, with this conversation, maybe they're only listening to us, maybe they're watching us. And it's the same with travel videos. It's something to fall asleep to, it's something to educate, it's some kind of adventure and entertainment. So it's more gripping, and it also feeds into my desire to travel and experience these things firsthand. For me personally, that's an important aspect of getting out of the books, getting out of the armchair, so to speak. I'm very good with theoretical things, but theory is only half of the coin. There needs to be a practical aspect as well. And if I was to sit down and explain this and write it out, it simply would not have the same effect as going into the mud and showing everybody that how this works and what's true, what's not true, and what we're willing to do to get this channel off the ground and show how serious we are about the contrast to modern secularism, and at least have more of at least show why it's worth having an open mind, if not a seeker's mind.
Yeah. So you would say that these different approaches work in tandem. So, for example, exploring something for video will then spark more interest that can lead to some kind of interesting article, or the other way around?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we at Gonzo Pilgrimage are working hard to create an approach that is going to work best for everybody. We will have the visual medium, we will have the written medium on our Substack. We will do, interviews such as this on camera, and then we'll also invite people to written interviews that either we can't get to physically, or are people that are just starting out and maybe only require a small written interview. And that also offers opportunities for all different forms of collaboration: audio, visual, written, all of these things.
Yeah.
It's just it's a large subject, trying to incorporate the culture and spirituality of the world into one project, and so it demands that
really.
it be multifaceted.
Yeah. Do you think there will be more also content that is something like podcast formats or something like that?
Sure. Well, yeah, like I said before, I think that depends on the reception.
On the demand.
It depends on the demand. It also depends on how quickly, how well we adapt, and what we need to adapt to. Because as at the time of this recording, the channel is fresh, and it's very possible, it's a realistic outcome that our tires don't get traction, and we will have to shift gears for the time being. Although keeping the pilgrim spirit in our heart, maybe we won't be able to physically travel financially or whatnot, and we will have to turn to other forms of media like a podcast. It would then make the most sense.
That's true.
But the important thing is that, at least speaking for myself, and I'd like to know if it's the same for you, and talk more about what makes you involved in Gonzo Pilgrimage, what your thoughts are about it, and how this applies to you. But the important thing for me is that this isn't going to stop. This is a mission that is more than just a fad or a channel. This is a personal mission of mine. And so however I have to adapt to get Gonzo Pilgrimage to be a Gonzo Pilgrimage for myself and everybody like me, whether like-minded or not, I will do what it takes to keep it running.
Yeah, I agree. I think that our general goals with that channel very much align. That's why I became part of it. We were talking a lot about it in the beginning. When you told me about it, I immediately thought that's the right way to go, and it sparked some interest in me. And my spiritual path, I would say, or my path in general in life, is one that is like, if I would sum it up, I think I would say that experience is the only reality there is. And so naturally experiencing things and exploring things is the one thing that drives me. And that's an important driver, but I didn't do it enough in the last couple of years. And so something in me woke up to the possibility to just join you on your pilgrimage and become a pilgrim as well. So, and it felt right. And I absolutely agree. Right now, there's nothing else I can imagine that would make any sense.
Yeah.
Even if we have to do something else, if we have to shift gears, if we have to be inventive, and maybe even to make some money on the side somehow, there's still, it's the number one priority, because it's something that I really believe in. And I would say that for me personally, there's also some kind of challenge involved, because going out doing that kind of stuff means to do lots of things that I never thought I would do. I was even hesitant to write down stuff for years. When I was younger, I was writing lots of stuff, lots of articles that I never published. And at some point I just stopped and thought, okay, now I had this a little bit arrogant attitude to say, okay, it's pearls before the swine. And I'm not that person anymore. I left that kind of arrogance behind me, and I think maybe someone can have use of me writing something down. And this is something that for many years I thought, yeah, but I don't care. And I stopped with this approach and tried to challenge myself in different ways. And making videos like that, being on camera like that, is something I still not feel very 100% comfortable with. But that's exactly the reason why I do it.
Yeah. Would you say that you're doing Gonzo Pilgrimage more for your spiritual experience, your spiritual development, or would you say that it's similar to what I described, or what was sort of I wouldn't say the main aspect, but a key influence on my idea to make the channel is it's not so much mine. It's a channel for the viewers.
Yeah. The funny thing about it is that for me those two things are actually the same.
They're
because
aligned.
my spiritual approach now actually aligns with this broader, with this much broader idea. So I don't see it as opposites, or I do not even see it as different things. Just as you described, I see us as the mirrors that reflect the experiences that we make. And obviously that does something to us as individuals, and it furthers our own spiritual evolution. It broadens our own perspectives, while simultaneously doing something much bigger as well. So in a way, I think it aligns pretty well, those two goals.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And yeah, it's a very difficult thing to describe because of that, because it's sort of this interplay that for us to, as you were saying, that it's about experience and trying to gain more experiences, but creating the experience of sharing the experience with the viewer, and trying to, that's really a key point of effort that we're still figuring out is the best way to allow a viewer, someone who's not sitting here with us now, to experience the experience, or some extension of it.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why it's great that we both are interested in trying to write about these aspects as well.
Yeah.
And there's going to be articles on videos that we do that will dive deeper, especially upon request. I mean, I think if we have enough people saying, can you please explain that more?
Yeah.
We can simply write an article, or if not, make another video, of course, depending on our schedule. But the fact that you know, that's also something that we can develop, and that's one of the points of this, is we're having these experiences and trying to create these experiences, and having that be like a sort of this realm. This channel is like, you know, a realm where these experiences can occur.
I mean, I see the whole concept of the pilgrimage as overcoming separation in a way. And the best way to overcome separation is by a shared experience. If you take away all the concepts, the words describing those experiences, really the core experience, if you share those, then separation kind of dissolves, at least a little bit. And that's basically the approach. And it might be difficult to understand if you're not actually invested in some spiritual traditions that talk about the illusion of separation and things like that.
Right.
But, and this is always the danger with a channel like that. If we speak about spiritual things, and that's where our perspectives come into play, is that we basically talk from our own experiences, then that means that sometimes people will have a hard time understanding what we are actually talking about. And but I hope that people will, in these situations, just write a comment or even write us a mail or whatever.
Sure.
Get in touch, and so that we can make it about this almost like a community kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something important to address, and that's another reason why you and I are working on this together. I think we're aligned on this concept that, as I said, when you to your earlier question about, is there a warrior mentality? Am I waging war against atheism and secularism? And I'm saying no. It's more of a necessary contrast that I see. We're not making this channel to push our views. We're not making this channel to get into arguments and debate people, but questions are welcome. That's also part of the experience. That's also the nature of seeking. And so, you know, having people get in touch, having people offer criticism of any kind is not a problem whatsoever. But the purpose of the channel is definitely not combative, and it's also trying to be as unbiased as possible. So again, this funny experience of going into a subjective experience while trying to create it as objective enough that the viewer can have their own subjective experience as well. That's key.
In a way, I would say it's also like lighting up a beacon of spirituality. It's this kind of fire in the mountains that people see from a distance and think, people who think they are lost in the woods, lost in the mountainside, and they see this beacon and they know that's a place where I can go to, and then come to that place, gather around this fire, and then share experiences and not being lost anymore.
It's almost like I can visualize it as like the beacons from the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that was actually, I didn't want to make that reference now, but yeah, it was exactly what I was
But it's like this,
about.
and it's important because, you know, it's that there's not one fire to gather around.
It's like one fire starts and the next. That's and
if we for example look at, say, Latin American Catholicism and then look at Polish Catholicism, these might be the same thing. They might be different things, and then we can immediately also go into pagan perspectives, and you know, and so there's.
This is for me.
And what resonates?
That's for me actually the true meaning of the word tradition. These beacons that kind of build a chain of beacons.
Yeah.
It's people talking about tradition, and they think we are talking about specific clothing or specific languages, or that's not the thing. Tradition, true meaning of tradition means that there is a core, the sacredness within all these different approaches.
Yeah.
That runs like these beacons through time.
Yeah.
And I hope to be able to, make that a really big fire.
Yeah. Fires, multiple fires.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Let's hope there will be multiple fires.
Yeah, enough. Well, I would like to imagine each video that covers a different perspective, again, either culturally or spiritual.
Yeah.
And that's an important distinction, because sometimes that distinction does need to be made in the videos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's my hope, that we can light a fire for everyone, whatever is their spiritual perspective, whatever resonates in their heart.
Yeah.
And that they can move forward in their life with that and explore and learn more about themselves and the world and everything within and without. And that would be an honor to be a part of that and to try to develop that for ourselves, but also allow others to have that experience as well. What are some ideas that you have for the channel with that in mind, to keep these fires burning and to maybe even grow them and dive deeper? Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to focus on, either together or separately, something that you yourself would contribute personally to Gonzo Pilgrimage?
I hope that one of my main contributions will be writing lots of stuff in the first place. That would be ideal. Sure, I will make a couple of videos, and I already have some ideas about concepts that are good enough to make a couple of videos, like video series. I think we might cooperate on some of them and might do some of them alone. But I would really hope that there is interest in the written word, because that's something that I think I can actually do a little better than making videos, at least at that point. So that would be my wish, but I'm open to everything. That's the thing, I want to make different experiences, and I even want to challenge myself. So the more challenging, the more interesting.
Yeah. And at the time of this recording, your video that we collaborated on was a review of a meditative mask.
Yeah.
And it's at the moment the most watched and most successful video on the channel. Would you be interested in doing more reviews and trying to have other aspects, other technologies, other things on the channel? Or is that something that was kind of a passion project for you, and now you're not, reviews won't be your thing, so to speak?
The thing is that it just happened more by accident. We were in the phase of starting this whole thing. The first video had just been released. And since I was paying for that Kickstarter campaign, I got my mask, and I was really excited finally to open it, and then I thought maybe there's something we could do with this. So instead of just opening the box like a berserk and just going right into it, I thought, okay, let's just be patient for a while. Even that was a big challenge. Setting up everything and making a short video about how I unboxed this thing, and then thought, okay, just unboxing might be, probably that's a bit boring. So let's go just a little bit deeper into it and explain a little bit about it, and then do a review. And so it turned into something much more, much bigger than I actually had thought.
Intended, yeah.
So, but I honestly would say, because I'm very interested in these kinds of technologies and how they actually work together, that I might do stuff like that in the future. Would be great if some companies say, hey, let's, you know, like give us the opportunity to test their stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'm not too optimistic this will happen anytime soon, but it would be great. I mean, I would be willing to test every one of them and give every one of them a fair chance. Because I really believe that these kinds of technologies are just another piece of the puzzle that can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
So
the thing is, I'm definitely interested in exploring it, but I will be honest, I don't know what to think about it just yet in terms of these review things. There's so many different factors to it, and I think that it's something we could definitely explore. I'm curious to try a review video myself, or trying to do a review video together. But it's important that it, well, two things. It's important that it always stays on mission, on point to Gonzo Pilgrimage. We'll never be shills for something just to do it, just because it claims to be spiritual or something.
I mean, then we would probably debunk it, and that would be actually an approach that I wouldn't shy away from at all.
That's the other thing I was going to say, is that you know, we would not stand for charlatanism, and we would not stand for false advertising. If something is terrible, something's terrible. However, it would be an interesting idea to have a device or have some kind of product, or perhaps if there's an up-and-coming company working with different plants of power or something like this, it would be nice and interesting to actually have something to promote, something to collaborate with, and maybe be sponsored by. But it would absolutely have to stay on mission.
I agree, and I think one thing that we can definitely say is that part of the mission, I guess, is that grifters should fear us. Because we will expose them. We are not the kind of new agey woo-woo guys. Now we're talking about real spirituality, and we are really willing to get in touch with every kind of spirituality you can think of. But if we find out that you are just doing some kind of role-playing game, then we will tell the world that this is the case.
I mean, that's the nature of trying to align with the channel of truth, you know, or the current of truth.
Exactly. I probably would add that for me personally, I also am really interested in the relationship between mental health and spirituality. And this is also something that ties these things together a little bit, because I think the lack of spirituality in the modern world is a huge contributor to mental health problems, and it's a lack of meaning. And I think part of that Gonzo mission is on that pilgrimage to find as much pieces of meaning and put them together in some kind of puzzle or something. Yeah,
I mean, I would definitely agree with some perspectives you see online, that when it comes to health, personal health, there's always these three unifiers that need to be kept in balance, like a perfect pyramid, or a perfect triangle rather, and that is the physical, mental, and spiritual. And I think, again, that's a reason for this video, this channel rather, to be contrasting secularism, is that by its very nature, it excludes a spiritual component to the self that in all human history has always been there until this point. And I mean, there's really no other sufficient word other than arrogant to say that, we have this modern arrogance, this contemporary arrogance to say that they were all fools back then that believed in the spirit. So This is, a topic that I think you will fit in perfectly with Gonzo Pilgrimage's mission, because in your personal practice, in your personal life, you've researched deeply the connection with the mind, the body, and the spirit in terms of health and wellness. And you're definitely very versed in these subjects.
It's kind of by force. I probably wouldn't have been interested in it as much as I am if I wouldn't have to deal with it myself. And I think that's also something, I don't like people bragging about that stuff. I don't like people going out and talking about all this kind of mental health stuff in a way that like as if they have a badge on their shoulder because of it. Like, it's not something to brag about. It's just something that should be discussed openly. And I really find that a spiritual approach to it has, at least for me, shown to be the best one. So I can share these experiences with other people and hopefully help some of them to have similar results with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting detail between us that you're familiar with these things, you've researched these things, and I do believe you can provide answers or perhaps the right questions to people that have gone through similar problems in their life that you've gone through with this triangle of the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. And for me, I've never had to investigate it to that degree, and so that's something where you definitely have the advantage in terms of knowledge. But I can say that it has been a very obvious consequence of my spiritual practice to be pleasantly surprised, even shocked sometimes, going through mental or physical pain and suffering, but by putting attention instead of the mental and the physical, but responding with these pains spiritually, that it did get better. And that I've experienced from one day to the next, for example, complete physical pain across my body, and then through ritual and meditation and spiritual working, come out the other side, literally the very next day, feeling completely refreshed, without pain, and with a clear mind and strong focus. So, this is again another point that that drives us to make this channel work.
And I think it also shows that there are really no limitations in terms of what we could potentially cover as topics, as long as it aligns with this spiritual worldview. Because I guess I don't tell too much about our own spiritual approach when I say that everything is spiritual for us. One of the core foundations of our both beliefs is that that consciousness, the spiritual world, is the actual foundation of existence, and not the other way around. So we really reject that materialistic approach that consciousness somehow, in a strange way, emerges from matter by accident. So this is just something where I say this is basically the antithesis to what we stand for. And I think if you see everything in that context, you have to say that basically everything is in a way spiritual. So basically we could make a video about that chair and give it a spiritual angle, because there is one.
That's why I wanted to include often in the promotion of Gonzo Pilgrimage is the spiritual and cultural niches of the world, because especially in terms of culture,
I think
that's an expression.
And lots of furniture should be included as well.
Exactly.
Like having these kinds of things, apples at furniture, and also other material stuff. Because I really think that this is something that cannot be said often enough. If you really tap into a spiritual mindset, there's actually no longer some kind of imaginary border between the spiritual and the material world. You understand that it's actually united. The material is an expression of the spiritual, and just this kind of perspective change. I mean, many people in this modern world are kind of materialistic and spiritual at the same time, and they have this kind of borderline in
Hard
between
divide,
the hard divide, and so for them some things are spiritual, but most of what they experience is just material. But this is just not the case, and it's extremely important to understand that, and that this is at the root of understanding every tradition. I really hope that what we are talking about resonates with people, and I hope this resonance will also translate into the kinds of actions that you actually wish for as a YouTuber, especially as someone who just starts out. So I really hope that people comment on our stuff, like our stuff, watch the videos they start watching to the end, and yeah, maybe even subscribing to the channel. That would be great, and actually that would be necessary for us to be able to continue with it. If someone just wants to have more content in general, then buy us a coffee, because we drink copious amounts of coffee on a daily basis. So
these last 3 documentaries, I have no idea how many liters or gallons of coffee we drink.
It's insane, and if you travel, you know how expensive coffee can be when you travel, and we don't want to go to Starbucks or some of these corporate things. So, but I think also down the road, I see us giving people the opportunities for merchandise and things like that.
We are currently developing limited edition offers to people in terms of potentially spiritual tools, merchandise, things that we want to offer to people that are fans and support their spiritual workings, and also try to grow financially, not to line our pockets, but to keep this thing going, because we are burning through what we've got to keep this thing alive.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there will be something for everyone. At some point, we will have something to offer for everyone who is the slightest bit interested in the content that we create. And so I really hope people will appreciate that and share their appreciation with us.
I think they will.
Yeah.
Well then, let's get another coffee and head out.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Links down in the description. And thank you all for watching till this point. Thank you all for your support. And we look forward to bringing you more content and more spiritual insights along the way.